Mr. Mayor, I'm sure you probably heard or watched the news about President Duterte's 80th birthday celebration, in which several of our fellow Filipinos gathered in more than 200 locations around the world. And I think that's indicative of his popularity, despite the fact that he's no longer he's no longer the president. Now, let me ask you: have you ever interacted with President Duterte in person, or by phone, or by paper, whatever?
You know what? Yes, I had some interaction with him, but it's funny because I had interactions with him when he was mayor, not as president.
Okay.
And I was still in the Philippines. I was with the national government. I was working for the Department of Interior. I was a public information officer, if I could remember it right. He was the mayor of Davao City, and we had an event in Iloilo City. I think if I'm not mistaken, the secretary for the Department of Interior was Secretary Barbers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the old barbers, not
Yes.
the younger one.
Okay.
Right? So we were there, and I was an employee of the Department of Interior and Local Government from the National Capital Region (NCR). So, and I know and I know him, and as a fraternity brother.
Yes.
You know, he's a member of the Lex Taliones Fraternitas, where I'm also a member.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a chance encounter with him. So I spoke with him. He's a very cordial guy, you know, and we had an exchange, and he learned that I'm also a member of the same group or the same fraternity, and he invited me to his hotel. You know, let's hang out. You know, let's talk, and just chat. And I said yes, right? So we had, but my boss told me to do things. So hang out with me tonight. We're doing this.
Mm-hmm.
I said, okay, Mayor. But then unfortunately, my boss gave me the task that I wouldn't be able to see him that night. That was my interaction. But I thought it was a very interesting conversation because here's the guy that would talk to a stranger, open his home or hotel,
Mm-hmm.
to a friend. So that's my memory of my recollection.
Oh, that's good. Then just full disclosure, Mr. Mayor is a member, and I'm also a member of Lex Taliones in the Philippines. Just wanted to put that out there. So this discussion is not just as Filipinos, but also as brothers of the former president. Now, which relationship with the International Criminal Court do you prefer? Do you prefer Donald Trump's or Bongbong Marcos' relationship with the position towards the ICC or International Criminal Court?
Full disclosure. Also, I'm not so much familiar with all the issues pertaining to ICC in the Philippines. I read some news, I read some information, but I don't pretend to know everything because I don't know the ins and outs or everything about what's going on there. As far as I know, during the time of President Duterte, that the Philippines withdraw its membership from the ICC. That's correct, right?
Mm-hmm.
Based on the news that came out. In short, the last time I remember, because the ICC has never been discussed here in the United States until recently, when the ICC issued an arrest warrant against Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel and some personalities, that Donald Trump, the President Trump, threatened ICC that if they come here in the United States, they're going to arrest them.
Correct.
Right. So that's what I remember.
Yeah, something
right.
like that. I can't remember the exact words, but yeah, it's posted on the White House website. So if you want to see the specifics, it's there on the website. That's where I saw it. But I can't remember. I didn't memorize it.
So your question is like, do you think do I follow the concept that Marcos welcomed ICC in the Philippines versus Trump trying to arrest ICC, right?
Exactly.
Oh man, it's a very, I would say also it's a very tough situation. For one thing, you and I know that the purpose of the ICC is, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Right.
The ICC is supposedly operate when all courts are, failing.
Right.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why there is Rome Statute. So I mean, like, obviously, despite some issues here in the United States, our justice system is still in place, and I think we're a big democracy. There are some challenge on our democratic process in terms of criticisms of all the things that are going on, but I would tell you that for courts to be able to issue TRO against President Trump, that's how powerful the courts are. So I would say the courts are functioning properly. Would there be a chance of constitutional crisis? Of course, it could occur, but right now our courts are working, so there is no room for ICC to come here, right? Now, in terms of the Philippines, I thought that the Philippines court system may not be perfect, but could work, right? So here's the question, and I want to go back. I want to throw back the question to you and to the audience. If we think that the Philippines courts are not working, I mean, I don't think that the President Marcos want that to happen, right? So I think it's in the interest of the Republic to think that our courts are functioning. So if our courts are functioning, therefore, I think we should make our courts stronger. So if whoever is liable in the courts of law, whether it's President Duterte, whether it's Vice President Sara, or whether it's President Bongbong Marcos, I believe that our courts in the Philippines should be, I'm not saying it is, should be strong enough to prosecute and to go after the people that we thought violate our laws.
Okay.
That's my position.
Yeah, I agree.
I'd rather these people try in their own country. Just the same here. I want them to be tried here,
Yes.
and I want them to be tried there as well.
Now, having said that, do you agree with President Duterte's arrest by the Philippine National Police and his trial by the International Court?
Well, listen. At the time, and there are two legal thoughts about that, right?
Okay.
Because the argument is that when allegedly he committed those crimes against humanity during the time he was president, and at the time we were still member of the Rome Statute, or we are signatory to the Rome Statute, and we are a member of the ICC. That's one thought.
Okay.
On the other hand, they said that even if we are, the process is you should be brought first to the local courts, and if the local courts didn't function, that's the time you become subscriber of the ICC, right? I'm just trying to
Right.
to follow with the news. So now to your question, do I agree? You know what I agree? I agree that we should follow the procedures.
Okay.
Whether whether it benefits the Dutertes or benefits the Marcoses, I don't care. For as long as we follow the rule of law. because that's what it is.
Right.
Because when we become laws of man and not of law, we become banana republic. Because imagine if let's just assuming, for instance, that the arrest of Duterte was illegal, and then they circumvent the law, they brought him to the ICC and so forth, right? I mean, like, everything ends. Who knows who's going to be the next president? If you don't follow the rule of law, the next president could do his own or whatever he wants and say, you know what, this is the law. And then it's going to be a cycle of violence. It's going to be a cycle of not following the rule. So now that's where you become that's where you lose your credibility and your trust as a country. Hence, in the eyes of the international community, nobody wants to invest in a country where there is no continuity. And I'm not saying this against the Philippines or whoever, and this is true to every country. That's why that's an issue here in the United States as well. People are raising the issue that all these things that are happening, the tariff, all these things, it erodes the credibility of the United States as a partner, as a trade partner, or as a security partner. So everybody is not immune. The United States, which is a big, stable, democratic country, is facing this test. How much more the Philippines? So my opinion and my stand is I think it would hurt the country if we are divided because we wanna circumvent or we wanna tailor fit the law according to what the administration needs. So whether it's gonna favor Duterte or against Duterte, assuming the Marcos administration has done correctly, right? Then so be it. I'm sorry, President Duterte. Maybe a lot of people love you. Maybe majority of the Filipinos love you, or maybe half, or maybe less. But the thing here is, the rule is you've done this. Now you're facing it. Then face the music. Even though it's bad for him, and it hurts him, and it hurts his supporters, because at the end of the day, it strengthens democracy. It strengthens the rule of law. If that is correct, I'm not saying that's correct, right? I just want to clarify.
Yeah.
So I am for, and I think the people and the country should always adhere to the rule of law, no matter where it favors.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I want to just echo Mayor's opinion. Again, it is a legal opinion, but he and I, being both being lawyers, we respect the courts. So right now, there's cases pending in the Supreme Court of the Philippines, and President Duterte's case is pending in the International Court. So whichever direction those courts arrive at or go to the decision, he and I will respect those decisions and we will abide by it. So just to clarify that, this discussion. Now, Mr. Mayor, let's shift to President Duterte's daughter, Vice President Sara. She has been impeached by Congress and will soon face trial before the Senate. Do you agree with impeaching her, with that impeachment?
Well, again, I don't pretend to know all the issues.
Okay.
Impeachment is one of the process of checking, the abuses of public official, right? Especially those level of public officials, whether it's vice president, the president, or whether those member of the Supreme Court, or those constitutional officers, right? That's one way of removing them from office through impeachment, and they are there to protect the public. So I'm not saying impeachment is wrong, because impeachment is a democratic process. So if you adhere to the democratic process, then you would not say it's wrong, right? Especially if there is something wrong
Right.
with what the official has done.
Mm-hmm.
So That's my main, perception on this. Now the question is, did she really do that, or did she really violate laws that would,
Impeachable
you know,
offense.
that would rise to the level of impeachment? Again, I don't know the facts,
Right.
and I'm not thoroughly vetting or knowing what's going on in the Philippines, but I would say it hurts the country. It divides the country, and knowing that in 3 years we're gonna have elections. I don't know whether sometimes there is what you call practical reasons, or sometimes you have to trade something in lieu of other things. I remember the president himself said, don't do that because it's just gonna hurt the country economically and in the eyes of the international community. I could care less about international community, because as a sovereign nation, we should always think about our interests.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care what the Americans would think of us. I don't care about what the other countries would think of us.
Mm-hmm.
As long as it's in the interest of the country, of the Philippines, they can do whatever they want. In the same manner here in the United States, us, right? We should be more, while we respect the observations and the opinion of international community,
Mm-hmm.
but always the domestic issues trumps the other issues, right? So I would say, economically or domestically, I think it hurts the Philippines that these things are going on when there are political bickerings. Well, I thought they run as in the same unity team, so I thought, I wish they would have worked towards making the country the Philippines greater than where it came from. I wish it was better than when Duterte was president. That's the goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being of Filipino descent, we have a strong interest in the native Philippines. We're proud Americans. We love this country. We serve this country as public servant. You as a veteran, Navy veteran, me as a public servant. We love America, but we still have some soft spot for the Philippines. Being we know people there. And frankly, the Philippines is an allied country, so the relationship is intertwined. So it's our interest to see the survival and the upliftment of the democratic process and the democratic principles. So seeing what's going on in the country over matters that are not helping uplift the standard of the people is hurtful. That's what I can tell. Now, you would argue otherwise, probably say, but they made a mistake, they gotta pay it. Of course, But again, like what I've said, I wish people, would use their power, wield their power more practically or reasonably, for the betterment of the country.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, I have a couple of hypothetical questions. First is, if one or both, Rodrigo or Sara Duterte, gets acquitted, would you invite them to visit Bergenfield? So that's one. And the second is, what do you think about the idea of sisterhood with their city, Duterte City, which is the city of Davao?
Well, listen, I mean, we're a very welcoming community. This is we have a great number of constituencies here that are kababayans. I would love them to visit Bergenfield and greet our kababayans. I'm sure there's a lot of our kababayans that love them, that adore them. In the same manner that maybe there are people that dislike them. and everybody's welcome here in the same manner. You know, I would love the President Bongbong Marcos to visit our town. So I don't want to limit our visitors to, you know, one particular portion of the party, but I think being a community that Filipino tribes, I would welcome and love our officials from the motherland, the native, the Philippines, to visit the town of Bergenfield, whether they're President Marcos or President Duterte or Vice President Sara Duterte.
How about the idea of sisterhood with Davao?
Well, you know, we've always been looking at those sisterhood. Anything that's going to help both towns and communities is a welcome act. You know, as a matter of fact, you know, other towns are talking about that. You know, I said, listen, I said, with or without sisterhood pact, we are willing to help if we can, and we are willing to receive if there's something that we will learn from you. A few years back, when I first became mayor, there was we were retiring 2 fire trucks. I donated one to the municipality of Macabebe. It's a nice fire truck, very useful, big fire trucks. We don't have that in the Philippines because they're big, they're powerful. And then the other one, I donated it to a town in Santo Domingo, in the Dominican Republic, where we have some residents also that, you know, that came from the town. So these are the things that, you know, that I was talking about. You know, I love sisterhood pact, but without them, it doesn't limit my interactions, or it doesn't limit my goal or my intent to share, you know, whatever resources we have that we thought, or I thought, would still be useful from other municipalities that don't have them.
That is good, Mr. Mayor. Now, let's shift to a couple of topics which are not as trending as what we've talked about. West Philippine Sea. What is your opinion on the armed forces of the Philippines position against China regarding the West Philippine Sea?
Well, I think it's the duty of our. It's the duty of the armed forces of the Philippines to patrol and to protect the sovereignty of the country, right, of the Philippines. And you know, based on historical claims, you know, the Philippines has rights under the exclusive economic zone, or the EEZ. At the same time, you know, the China has some historical claims, but you know, I think the UNCLOS has ruled on this already, right? Which brings to the point that under the Mutual Defense Treaty, the United States is obligated to protect the Philippines if there is an attack under the statute, right? So now here's the question: is, you know, are they correct on doing that? You know, the Philippines, absolutely, they're correct because that's their sovereignty. Now the question here is, how about practicality? I mean, like, are we really able to defend it or not? I don't know. I mean, like, you know, China is a giant versus the Philippines. So are we going to use more resources in the West Philippine Sea versus what's going on in domestically? It's a choice. Because I've heard, you know, the Philippines is buying billions of dollars of fighter planes to defend that areas, right? So I'm not saying I know everything, but you know, it really brought me to thoughts whether that's the money well spent, or do we really need that? That's the question, and I don't have the answer for that. I just wish that our say here in the U.S., because they're you know, the U.S. are the ones selling it, would provide, you know, the Philippines the guidance you know, about those actions, because it could create more tension in terms of, you know, bringing the Philippines at the brink of war. At the same time, using the resources that should be spent towards domestic issues to alleviate poverty, to educate our people, or to help build businesses and push development. Right? So those are the questions that I think, you know, we should ponder. You know, so I hope the policymakers would create the right decision, or would make the right decision, because I'll give you, you know, just to give you an example, Jose, right? You know, if there is if you see some encroachment in that area by the Chinese vessel, now you have a fighter plane, F-15, F-16, whatever, F-35. You know, you have a fighter. What would you gonna do if you're a pilot? You say, you know, you notify, get out from our areas of jurisdiction, right? And then you're gonna be flying there.
Mm-hmm.
So then the China says, you know, F you know,
Mm-hmm.
excuse me for the language.
Mm-hmm.
So what else could you do? You cannot drop a bomb, or you cannot hit them with missiles. Otherwise, it's an attack.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have then you have, or if you're flying there, and then with your fighter jets, and then you have 10 fighter jets from China surrounding you, and then say, you know, get out of our jurisdiction, or we shoot you down.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So these are, and then what you're gonna do? Then you go back to your base, because you don't want to get into shooting war with China.
Mm-hmm.
The Americans are doing their best,
Mm-hmm.
or we're doing our best to avoid escalation.
Mm-hmm.
Why would the Philippines escalate?
Right.
That's my question. I'm not a policymaker. I don't pretend to know all the things, but I think those are things that you know, we should ponder, because apparently, you know, it gives pride to a lot of Filipinos. Oh no, we're now gonna have a jet.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, we're gonna have a fighter jet. We're now modernizing our equipment.
Mm-hmm.
But even if you modernize your equipment, you are not going to use that equipment,
Mm-hmm.
because you are using that equipment against a China, which, you know, potentially you're just using the equipment against China. You're not using it against Vietnam,
Mm-hmm.
or Malaysia, or even other. So the purpose of that is to deter the China from encroaching. Which, even if they encroach, you're gonna do anything. But the problem is, you know, the next question is, do you think if you go into the shooting war with China, do you think the naval fleet or the Indo-Pacific Command of the United States will come to rescue the Philippines? Well, you know, I think the policymakers should think twice, because the United States always act on its national interest, not on the interest of some other countries. That's what I thought.
I think, Mr. Mayor, you brought up good points with your hypothetical question, or with your rhetorical question, sorry. Those are really valid questions.
Right.
And I've thought about those also. And I think those questions distinguishes the Duterte administration as compared with the Marcos administration. And Duterte is more like, what are we gonna do? We can't win this war. Why fight it? So, and I think, but because of that stance, a lot of people, not all, are saying, "Oh, Duterte is pro-China," and then here comes Marcos. He wants to buy fighter planes. Oh, he's more nationalistic, something like that. So, those are issues. Yeah, like you said, you and I were not policymakers, but we notice those distinctions, and I hope the people they elect wise policymakers, so that the decision that's best for the Filipino people and the country would be made by these policymakers. I agree with that.
So you have to note, Jose, that the China is not just a neighbor. China is not just encroaching in that West Philippine Sea, right?
Right.
You have to understand that China is also one of the biggest trading partner of the Philippines.
Correct.
So it's in the same manner. Even if we disagree with China, even if you criticize China for what they're doing, in the same manner, our trade officials are asking China to buy our goods.
Right.
So this is the things that you don't realize at the back end, right? So we are a trading partner. In the same manner, we're trying to be competitively, we're trying to have a competitive advantage in our trading deals with China. I'll give you an example. They buy most of our agricultural products, like even banana, right? So imagine the Philippines produces a lot of bananas, right? These are simple banana talk, right?
Yeah.
So we have banana plantation in Mindanao, in the Visayas. So those bananas don't go to the regular market. They are exported to China, to Japan, to So in case of escalated conflict and they don't buy those bananas, what happens to our farmers? Right? That's one. Number two, we have a lot of many of our industries are intertwined with the Chinese companies, and a lot of people don't realize that they own some of the industries. They have cyber security wise, they can able to trigger some problems with our cyber security. So the point is, even the United States are avoiding, even the United States is avoiding an escalated conflict with China, because right now we're just talking of the tariff, right? We're not even going to a shooting war with China, but the United States is now having a problem with the ban of the importation of rare raw materials that produces batteries, that produces some parts of the missiles, that produces some semiconductor here in the United States. It's just a trade war. It's just a tariff war. So now it rocks the global market. So the United States is avoiding war with China because it's not good for the economy and it's not good for the country. You don't want to send naval fleet along the Strait of West Philippine Sea, because it's gonna drag Japan, it's gonna drag Taiwan, it's gonna drag all these countries to a war unnecessarily. So God forbids, with the Philippines fighter jet see observe a vessel, and despite several warnings, the vessel do not want to move, and without proper thought or discretion, sink the boat. That start the war. Remember the start of the Philippine-American War. It started with shooting people.
Yeah.
That brought the country to a war.
Yeah.
I hope not.
Right.
As patriotic as a lot of Filipinos are, but it requires a lot of soul searching. What do we want to achieve?
Right.
What do we mean by sovereignty? What does sovereignty means to us, right? Or could we exploit it jointly? Was there any move between the United States, the Philippines, or China, whether we can jointly explore the natural resources and whether we can maintain the freedom of navigation by not necessarily fighting over that land? That nobody even lives, except for those people that were brought there to make sure that we have a proper claims. right? So I mean, these are the things that we, that are that's our patriotism in the right place and in the right direction. What about patriotism in our own native land, where there's no claim? What about patriotism during the election, when you are not susceptible to vote buying? What about patriotism to making sure that we respect the law? We cannot have convenient patriotism because it doesn't affect us. To claim that that's our land. Now you say I'm patriotic and nobody should be there, but then we have selective patriotism because I'm gonna vote this person because of this. So that's not real patriotism. So if we really are patriotic, then we should start where we can start.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now my next question, you mentioned about, is related to what you mentioned, patriotism. I've been residing in the United States in the last 3 decades, and I've seen so many Americans very patriotic, even without ROTC or without undergoing ROTC, which means Reserve Officers Training Course. In the Philippines, there is a proposal to make the ROTC mandatory so that the young people, the youth, will become more patriotic or become patriotic. What is your opinion on that proposal?
Well, I really haven't weigh on that, but I think requiring everybody to undergo ROTC is not new anymore. Other countries have done that. Even in Israel, in Korea. I think I don't know how intensive it is.
Okay.
But at least the basic, I would agree.
Okay.
As part of the program.
Okay.
Of the government, not. I tell you, not just for purposes of military.
Okay.
But maybe for purposes of discipline, but for purposes of being fit, right? Because it could be military or understanding the tenets and the ethics of being being in the military. So here in the United States, we have what we call the registry also, right? That if you are able-bodied between 18 to 25, male, you should register for selective service. So that's a requirement also once you become a permanent resident and you're a citizen in that case. So requiring or everyone undergoing ROTC in the Philippines, not a bad idea. How much credit or how much semesters, something that we can we can argue or we can agree on. So I don't know, is it a year or two? Maybe 1 semester or 2 semesters. It's okay.
Okay, good. And then my next question is about a program which brought me to the United States more than 3 decades ago. It is called the Philippine Enlistment Program.
Right.
As I mentioned during our break, the United States has been the United States started recruiting Filipinos in the Philippines to join the armed forces of the United States. They started recruiting in 1901. And that stopped in 1991 when the volcano, Mount Pinatubo, closed down or shut down or demolished the American bases. And of course, the program, the Philippine Enlistment Program, which I went through, as a matter of fact, I came to the United States without a passport, without immigration documents. All I had was a military ID. We went through the port of entry in Los Angeles. We showed our ID. Okay, you're in. So that's I've been advocating for its restoration. I know there's no basis, but since we have visiting forces agreement, I've been advocating that why not ask the Americans? I know the military folks might not be able to approve it, but I think it's a it's a good conversation to have with politicians to restore the recruitment of Filipinos in the Philippines to join the U.S. Armed Forces. What is your opinion on that?
Well, listen, I mean, everybody recruits in the Philippines, not just the military, but foreign companies, U.S. companies, private, government, local government units, hiring teachers. So if that's an opportunity that's available to our kababayans or the Filipinos, why not, right? So I'm not opposed to it, but also I'm not, I don't mind if the U.S. would want to recruit and the willing people are willing to join. It's a free country, right? I just don't think there is a program right now in the United States that would allow a foreign citizen to become part of the armed forces unless you're a permanent resident. So I think you should be a permanent resident first before you can apply for the armed forces. But again, like what you've said, if I agree, if there's such program that they recruit from the Philippines, I think it's a great opportunity for the Filipino youth or the Filipino citizens, that if they're willing to join the armed forces of the United States, it's a good program. It's a good employer. It's a great employer. So I would be happy to see that.